Hello, everyone, and thanks for checking out Everyday Short Stories Chapter 3. This month's theme was family, and it was an amazing show. This story is called The Family I Was Given. Just a word of warning to the viewers, it does have some adult language and it deals with some mature subject matter that may not be suitable for children. Enjoy!
Hi, I'm Gwyn.
Hi, Gwyn.
I got these new progressives and I can't decide if I use them or not. So family. I didn't really have a title for this piece, but I think I'll call it Family Feud. Because when I was a kid, I always wanted to be on the Family Feud. I was kind of obsessed with it and I watched it all the time and I was really good at it by myself. But it wasn't just that I wanted to meet Richard Dawson. It was that I was really taken by these big families. You know, there had to be at least 6 or 8 of them or something, and they were all so happy, and they would laugh and work together and hug each other and jump up and down when they got the right answers. And I just thought that looked so cool because my family was very small. And from an early age, my family was fractured. My mom left when I was 4, and my brother Jeff and I stayed with my dad, Herb. And our address was 227 Bliss Court, and that was in Walnut Creek, California. That's relevant at some point. We saw my mom every other weekend, so she wasn't far, but she wasn't in our daily lives. She remarried, and it would be decades before she and my dad would become friends again. It was not a pretty divorce. It was very ugly, actually, and hurtful for everyone. But life at Bliss Court was often fun. It was always chaotic, difficult. We were basically feral, kind of raised by wolves. There was a whole pack of neighborhood children, and I was the only girl. So a lot of grit, but not sure it was always for the best. And my dad wasn't always very easy on me. He wasn't easy on my brother either, but it was different because I was the only girl. And we had a difficult relationship. In fact, I hated him for a while. When I was 10, I wrote my first autobiography. And the first chapter was called My Dad. And I believe it said something along the lines of, "What shall I say about my dad, Herbert Willard Fawcett? He's an asshole." So that was that. I often threatened to run away, and he would remind me just to leave my key. And so it went. We had a difficult relationship. In fact, in college, it got so bad that we stopped talking entirely for a few months. I blamed him for everything. I blamed him for the divorce. I blamed him for my eating disorder. I blamed him for being molested by a family friend. I put my mom on a pedestal. I worshipped her because she wasn't there. And it was just too painful for me to blame her. So I kept this asshole dad narrative going for a really long time, not really realizing just how much he truly loved me. And we would struggle for years. I mean, we fought about everything. He could get me worked up about anything, truly. But over time, our fights got less intense and became more conversations as opposed to arguments. We would talk and talk and talk, and we could talk about anything. He was truly one of the funniest and smartest and most well-read and most talented guys I knew, and no one could make me laugh more. And when I got a little older and got married and had kids, stuff shifted, and there were old wounds that reopened and questions that came up about my own childhood and things that I wanted to understand better. And I kind of felt broken all over, but throughout all of that, we got closer and closer. And he and my husband Mike were close. My girls adored him. Grandpa Herb was much softer than Father Herb. He was definitely a softer version of my dad. Still one of the funniest people I knew. And we talked all the time. the girls and I would drive up there and visit him regularly. I would call him for no reason, just to chat about whatever, politics or myself or life, just anything. And at some point it dawned on me that this asshole dad had become my best friend, and he truly was. So a few years ago, he started sending me listings of houses in weird places, not weird, but like Portland or, random. I'm like, what's going on? And he said, well, we have to move. The house, we can't afford it anymore. He'd been there for 46 years, but during the 70s and 80s, which were his prime earning years, they were also his prime partying years. So he had not managed his money well. And anyway, they had to move. And my stepsister, who I'm also close with, lives in Atlanta. So he tells me that they're thinking of moving to Atlanta. Have you been to Atlanta? His rationale was that my stepsister was there, is there. He was 14 years older than my stepmom and had some health issues, heart disease and some other things, and felt that he needed to get her closer to my stepsister for when the time came for him to go. And I would say, Dad, we can stay in your house. Like, we can move Gosha when you're gone. It's okay. But no, he was pretty serious about this. And I was beside myself. There's a saying that you don't transplant old trees, and he was already 81, so this whole move seemed crazy to me. And Mike and I did everything we could to keep him there. They had their friends, they were very social. My dad still played the bassoon in an orchestra, he had students. They had parties, they would go to Carmel with their dog and walk on the beach. I mean, it was, that's where they belonged. It made no sense to move. And we tried, and for a couple of years we managed to help keep them there. But in March 2015, I got a letter in the mail, and it was a done deal. It was happening. They were moving. So I called my brother in Seattle, and I probably drank 3 bottles of wine and cried for hours. I emailed my dad and said, I can't talk to you. I just can't. So I dumped it all on my brother, which was awesome. When I finally did talk to my dad, I was just like, what the fuck are you going to do in Atlanta? I mean, what are you going to do? Oh, I'll go to the musicians union. I'll meet people. I'll get some students from the local high schools. Anyway, over the next few months, we helped them pack up. It was torturous. I was going up and down and to the Bay Area. My brother was coming down from Seattle, Mike, and the girls and I, finally in August of that same year, 2015, we drove up for a final farewell. My childhood home, my neighborhood, basically the end of an era. And we put them on a plane, their little dog, and they flew to Atlanta. And in my heart, I somehow knew that the move would kill him somehow. They got to Atlanta, and it was a complete shit show. I'm not kidding. They were living with my stepsister and her husband and their 2 children and their 2 dogs and their dog. And that went on for 2 months, so you can imagine. They were looking for a house. They were depressed. They were stressed. They were missing their friends. My stepmother started drinking those large bottles of white wine. She'd say 1 bottle of wine a day, but it was the large format. I was talking to my stepsister constantly. Part of me was kind of like, this is what you wanted, this was your idea. But I didn't really say that much. They finally found a house. My dad complained about everything in it. But they were settled. So at Christmas, we flew out to spend Christmas there. We had not spent Christmas away from our home in LA since we had kids. So this was a pretty big deal. And it was, again, pretty excruciating. Seeing their house with all their belongings from our house in Walnut Creek, and just seeing that this was where they were now going to live out their lives, which made no sense to me. It was hard. We had a great time. The kids put on shows. We had fun. We drank. But upon leaving, I was maybe Mike can vouch. I was inconsolable. I knew somewhere in my soul that I was never going to see my dad again. And Mike said, you always say that. Every time we leave, you say, oh, I'm never going to see him again. And I said, yeah, I know, he's an old man, but this is different. I could just feel it. So we flew home, and back in LA, I struggled through New Year's Eve and struggled through the beginning of the year, and just was trying to stay connected, calling him, checking up on him. We talked pretty much daily, but I still didn't see what was truly happening. I didn't know how depressed he was. I didn't know that his arthritis was keeping him from playing the bassoon anymore, making reeds. I didn't know he was wearing diapers. I didn't know that he was feeling like this incredible burden on our family. I would try to encourage him to set up his music room, to play, to make friends, to take walks. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough, and on February 13th of 2016, he took his own life. He sat in his favorite chair, and he took a toxic combination of medications, and he put a plastic bag over his head. And that is how he left, on his own terms. Needless to say, I was completely shattered, abandoned again, and broken. But as I worked through it, I decided and determined for myself that it was really more of a death with dignity than a suicide. It's hard for me to even call it a suicide now, because had he asked me, I certainly would have helped him at that point. I just didn't know everything that he was going through. So I'm still here putting the pieces back together, and my family is a bit smaller now, and it's taking different shapes. But we're relying on each other in new ways and getting to know each other in different ways. And I know that he knew how much I loved him, and I know that he knew that I knew how much he loved me, and that it just wasn't enough. As much as he loved me, he just simply had to get off the ride. So we're learning a new way of being. I will never be the same, and I'm pretty sure that we will never be on the Family Feud. And that's okay. I am truly grateful for the family that I was given.